In a world where mere millionaires have become a dime a dozen, there is a new billionaire in town. Trump's the name, Donald Trump. The town is New York City, and he has made his money mainly from Manhattan real estate. Not yet 40, Donald Trump is a major deal maker, a swashbuckler. He takes chances that would make a less daring man shudder. But his critics say that he's doing harm to New York City by helping to make it into a city for the very rich, by driving up prices in his luxury buildings. What he really loves is real estate, for when Trump's the name, real estate's the game. And it's mainly here in New York City that he plays it. For example, in Manhattan, he bought both corners of 6th Avenue and Central Park South, a prime piece that everyone else wanted, just across from Central Park. He gobbled up 100 acres of Manhattan on the shores of the Hudson River. He put up a huge 5th Avenue moneymaker called Trump Tower. And just a few blocks away, another one called Trump Plaza. They say he's land hungry, money hungry, power hungry.
The power is nonsense. I love the creative process.
What about the name of Trump City? Trump Tower we're sitting in, Trump Plaza, Trump Castle.
It sells, Mike. All I know is...
That's all it is?
It has nothing to do with the ego. All I know is it sells.
Trump Tower on 5th Avenue, the centerpiece of the Trump empire. Per square foot, the most expensive apartment, shops, and office space in Manhattan. The cheapest one-bedroom apartment here will run you $800,000. 2 bedrooms, $1.2 million. A 9-room apartment is being advertised for $12 million. Tourists come from around the world to see the rose marble atrium. The list of stores that rent space read like a who's who of chic. And there's a waiting list despite the average commercial rent of about $1 million a year. If Trump Tower is his most prestigious accomplishment, surely this huge piece of Manhattan Island will be Trump's most ambitious venture. The old Penn Central Railroad yards. For now, he calls it Lincoln West. 100 acres, 14 full blocks along the Hudson River, for which he paid $100 million. This deal makes Trump the largest individual landholder in New York City.
All along from 72nd all the way down to 59th, we're going to have magnificent marinas, shopping, restaurants, everything all over the Hudson River.
Of course, the question is, will Donald Trump be able actually to develop his 100-acre dream of Lincoln West? Others before him have tried and failed.
How much trouble is the city giving you? How much trouble are West Side community people giving you?
Well, trouble. I mean, what's trouble? I've had trouble all my life as far as that's concerned. It gets to be difficult, I think, politically for the politician to say, here comes Donald Trump, let's give him what he wants. And I don't blame them.
Well, you want tax abatements, you want special treatment, and by and large, you've gotten special treatment or tax abatement.
That's correct.
He got very special treatment 10 years ago when New York City was thought to be going bankrupt. Trump, who was then a brash 28-year-old, bought the dilapidated Commodore Hotel on 42nd Street, just as it was about to be boarded up. He gutted it, renovated it, and opened the Grand Hyatt Hotel in its place. And he convinced the city to give him an unprecedented $40 million tax break.
You know why he made a wonderful deal? Because nobody else wanted it. They all thought it was a terrible deal.
Yeah. Ed Koch is mayor of New York.
The city was going in the dumper.
Right. The city was going into bankruptcy is what everybody thought, and so he took a chance. Well, you know, that's what entrepreneurial ability is all about. And sometimes you make it, and sometimes you go bust. He's lucky. He's made it.
All of the fun is waiting for you at the castle. Trump's Castle.
Trump Castle, the latest hotel to open in Atlantic City. He picked it up from the Hilton Corporation for $325 million just a month before it was set to open. And through financial wizardry, he used almost none of his own cash.
We'll be number one. The right management, we're number one. Nobody competes with it.
The first month they were open, the casino broke the all-time first-month Atlantic City record with a profit of $21 million. This, Trump says, is where the gravy is. And this is only one of 2 casinos he has in Atlantic City. The other, Trump Plaza, opened a year ago.
But this, I know 3 children and all, but this is a mammoth place that you have over here.
Ivana and Donald Trump have been married for 8 years. She was raised in Czechoslovakia. She used to be a model, an Olympic skier. Trump saw in her the same drive and enthusiasm he has. Today, she's an executive vice president of the Trump Organization with a grueling schedule of her own. A few years ago, she convinced him to buy this house in Greenwich, Connecticut, so they could take weekend breaks from the city grind. But even in the country, Donald Trump remains a city boy.
Ivana, straighten me out about something. Why does he show up beside his swimming pool, out in the country, dressed as though he's on his way to town to go to work? It's 4 o'clock of a Sunday afternoon.
Well, it's not always like that. Donald dresses
Yes,
casually
it is.
at times, not very often, but
When?
I always tease him that he's in a 16-piece suit. And it's like I said, it's probably the part of the image. The people think about the businessman, banker. You know, you don't see the banker running around in the jeans. So maybe it is just part of it.
Does he relax? Is he working all the time?
Well, it's hard. If the people which knows us, they knows us both. So they would say they both crazy. We really like the same thing, which probably helps it very much.
What kind of thing do you like?
Well, in work, that's number one, both of us. And in the relaxing, we come here to the Greenwich, and Donald plays tennis, and I do my gardening. And they're really children and enjoying quiet evenings. Because if you give 10 hours of hard work during the day, and you're wheeling and beaming and scheming and dealing, at the evening you just want to have your peace.
What is it that you're working so hard for?
I don't find work to be work. I don't work for ambition's sake, which is a horrible word in itself, because
Why?
I don't even consider myself ambitious.
Wait a minute. What do you mean you're not ambitious?
Well, I don't think I'm ambitious. I think I'm somebody that enjoys so much what he's doing. I don't think it has anything to do with ambition, Mike.
Good afternoon, the Trump Organization.
Ambition, creativity, money, whatever. This is where the action is, on the 26th floor of Trump Tower.
I don't give a damn if he buys it or not, but if he's going to buy it...
United Parcel tried to convince him to take $40 million for a small piece of his Lincoln West project, that 100 acres on the Hudson River. And that's almost half what Trump paid for the entire piece.
But I don't want to make a big deal out of something, because frankly, I don't even want to sell the piece. I mean, you know, we're talking about like doing a big deal. I don't even want to make a deal.
He talks of millions the way most of us talk of nickels and dimes. His critics say he's one of the culprits who is making New York too much a city for the rich.
On the west side, you're talking about building for the rich.
That's right, but that's...
Here for the rich,
Mike,
Trump Plaza for the rich.
There are no programs. You don't have any programs. There's nothing else you can do.
The U.S. government used to give big tax deductions to real estate developers to encourage them to build low and middle income housing. Not so anymore, says Trump.
I'm talking financing programs for senior citizens, for people who are infirm, for elderly, for middle income.
So
There are
New
no
York,
programs.
so New York City is becoming a city for the rich or the very poor.
New York City has been becoming a city of the very rich, actually, and the poor, unfortunately, and the middle class are having a hard time, and it's a big problem. It's a big problem for New York.
Trump likes the attention he gets from crowds, from the establishment, and from the press, but he is very sensitive about the press.
I don't think they've portrayed what I'm really all about, necessarily.
Okay. What are you about that they have failed to portray?
I believe they like making me out to be somebody a little bit more sinister than I really am, and I don't look at myself necessarily as being sinister.
Well, how can they make Donald Trump, all-American boy, sinister?
Well, I don't know that they portray me as Donald Trump, all-American boy. And I'm not saying that I am, by any means.
The all-American boy or sinister?
Let's see if he gets a touchdown, Mike. Got to get Mike off this subject.
You'd like to control everything. You'd like to control this broadcast. You want to control Mrs. Trump.
No.
You want to control what's going on there in the field.
Okay.
You want to control...
I know I'm not going to control the broadcast. I know I'm not going to control Mrs. Trump. To a minor extent, you can wish what you want to happen on the field. Okay. No, I don't want to control anything, Mike.
Even you know that that's not quite
maybe
true.
a step too far.
There is one thing Donald Trump has not been able to control: the tenants who live in this building at 100 Central Park South, a building Trump bought a few years back. It's filled with rent-controlled apartments occupied by tenants who are now angry because they say that Trump is trying to get them out by hook or crook. Like most developers, he wants to evict the tenants so he can build expensive new apartments and charge a bundle for them. And like most developers, he's having trouble doing it.
He wants us out because he wants a building.
What's wrong with that?
What's wrong with it? How about us? There we go. What are we going to do?
He's a very arrogant human being who really doesn't care about the lives of people like you see in this room here. He bought the building knowing exactly what this building was earning and exactly what the status of the building was. And yet now Donald would like to wipe out the rent control, rent stabilization laws with one snap of his own golden fingers, and that's not the way this world works.
Almost nobody believes that you're going to be able to get those tenants out of there. This is a fight that's going to go on and on and on.
Could be, could be. We'll see what happens, Mike.
And when they call you arrogant and cruel, those tenants over there, does that get under your skin?
No, because you see, I think I'm right, and when I think I'm right, nothing bothers me. Nothing gets too much under my skin. Again, you have multimillionaires living in rent-controlled apartments, and I think it's a disgrace.
Not just multimillionaires.
Mike, you take a look at the people, and don't let them parade with their little dresses that they go out and buy because you happen to be here for $10 so they look nice and poor. You go look into the people, and you go see, you tell me, you come back in 6 months and tell me that they're not very wealthy people. You'll be very surprised to find out they're very wealthy people, Mike.
He will say there are people in here with a lot of money who are taking advantage of him.
He has said.
Well, I know that.
And he says taking advantage. Does he mean that they're not able to live up to their lease? And if they are living up to their lease, the law is the lease. And the lease, if he wants to change the law, fine.
With respect to his Central Park South property, there I'm not crazy about the way he's proceeding. But what one has to remember is that no one says he's an angel, and where he violates rules, regulations, we're going to hold him accountable. But on balance, I believe he is a big plus for New York City.
Okay. Start off, obvious question. Why did you put your letter in the paper?
I'm a proud American, and I'm tired of seeing this country get ripped off by every nation practically in the world. When I look at Japan as an example, and I love the Japanese people, I do a lot of business with the Japanese people, but they've taken advantage of the United States. We're defending Japan. Japan right now is far and away the wealthiest country in the world. We're defending Japan, and it doesn't make sense. We're bringing ships through the Persian Gulf. We're paying for it. The oil is going to Japan. They get 60 to 70% of their oil from Japan. We get 4 to 5%. We really don't need it. Why isn't Japan contributing? Why isn't Saudi Arabia, why isn't Kuwait contributing big, big, big money toward their defense? It doesn't make sense.
On the same subject, what about the idea that as a superpower we have obligations to protect freedom of navigation, all the other obligations that come along with it that don't necessarily reap material benefits for the U.S. but has another higher responsibility?
We have absolute obligations to protect freedom. But we don't have obligations to protect freedom of countries that are far wealthier than we are. This country loses $200 billion a year, much of it because of the competition that we have with Japan and other countries that are very effective. This country is losing $200 billion a year. Other countries are making hundreds of billions of dollars. We're losing because of the defense. We are defending everybody. We can't defend everybody. Eventually, everything's going to blow, because this country is essentially a bankrupt country. Japan, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, these very, very wealthy countries that we're protecting should pay for their own defense. They should pay us for the defense, or they should defend themselves. I want to help, I recommend helping, but we should be reimbursed for the costs of this defense.
What do you mean by our country's a bankrupt country?
We're losing the United States is losing $200 billion a year. $200 billion we're losing in this country. As simple as that. If this were a company, they would have filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy proceedings years ago. This country is losing so much money that there's a question as to how much longer it can continue. And there's a real question. The crystal ball is eventually going to explode. And there's no reason for it. Japan should pay us for defending them. We're taking tankers through the Persian Gulf to go to Japan so that Japan can generate tremendous industry in its country so that they can sell cars and everything else to America and essentially really hurt the American economy. I'm not opposed to free trade. I'm only saying that when it comes to the billions and hundreds of billions of dollars that we're spending to defend other countries that are very capable of paying for that defense themselves, then we should be reimbursed for that money.
So the 200 billion you're really talking about trade deficits.
We're talking about huge trade deficits. I mean, you can't continue to run a company or a country and lose $200 billion a year, and that's what we're doing, and it's going to go up.
Switching the subject a little bit. So basically the main reason why you wrote this or put it in the paper was just a strong feeling. It wasn't a political aspiration or a publicity thing. It was, this is how you feel, or...
I feel very strongly and know for a fact that the United States is being ripped off by so many countries that can well afford to pay the United States for the services, at least partially, for the services that the United States renders. If a company or a country ever ran the way the United States is running, forget it. Only the United States can actually get away with it in the true sense. The United States is the greatest of all nations. The United States is being taken advantage of by too many countries and people. And we have to be reimbursed by these extremely wealthy money machines, Japan, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and if we're not, we're fools. We're fools. And I don't like being called a fool, and I hope our leaders don't like being called fools, but right now this country is in shambles. It's losing $200 billion so that we can fuel the economy of Japan and other countries, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, so many others, and there's no reason for it. There's no reason. If asked, and asked firmly, they will pay.
What about your political aspirations? They've been bantered about in the papers a little bit. Do you have any?
I have zero political aspiration. I run a company. I believe I do it better than anyone. I enjoy what I do. I deal with all of the same people that we're talking about. I deal with the Saudis. I deal with the Japanese. I don't think anybody sells much more real estate than I do to the Japanese, the Saudis, etc. They buy the most expensive apartments in the world that I happen to build. And I know the people, and I like the people. But that doesn't get away from the fact that this country is being totally ripped off by foreign countries, many of whom I deal with. And I think it's very unfortunate for the United States.
You're going out to New Hampshire in October, obviously. There's somebody there pushing you to run for the presidency. Why are you doing this?
Well, I had heard 2 weeks ago that they're pushing, and they're very much pushing to have Trump run for the presidency. I'm not interested in running for the presidency. I'm greatly honored. The man that's doing it is a highly respected man who's been responsible for a lot of people's success. And I am honored. I'm not interested in running for the presidency.
There was a great push for a New York office, whether it be mayor or to Senate, and there was a lot of push. Is that something that at some time in the future you'd be interested in, or?
I have zero interest in running for political office. I love what I do, and I really believe I do it better than anyone else, and I think the track record shows that. But if I can point out the deficiencies in the way our system is going, if I can point out certain stupidities, because that's really what it is, it's a lack of common sense and a lack of business sense that we're defending countries that are essentially far wealthier than we are, based on a current balance sheet. If I can point that out, and if somebody will act and do something about it, I've done a great service to the country, and that's what I want to do.
I think that's it, unless you want to go over something that we didn't cover, or you want to restate.
I think that's fine.
Okay.
Good luck.
We're done.
I'll watch. It's on tonight.
Strong opinions on anything.
That's especially politicians.
That's right.
They have. I watch these guys. They talk. That's why that's the problem.
Yep.
They don't want to offend anybody.
That's right, because they won't talk about it.
Including other nations.
That's right.
It's just incredible.
Mr. Trump, could I just get you listening?
Yeah, sure.
So it might be on tonight. I can't tell you who's even doing the piece, because when I left...